Welcome to Stepping on the Mat, episode 002 with me, Aaron Martinez. Today, we have a special guest in the basement, a young talent that has already accomplished a lot, and we're only at the beginning of her story. She started her wrestling career practicing and competing against boys. She has traveled in an RV all around the U.S. to wrestle in tournaments that would allow her to compete in high school divisions. She is currently the number 5 ranked women's wrestler in the country for high school at 152 pounds, according to the USAW rankings. Her recent most accomplishments are the 2022 Super 32 champion, the 2022 Fargo National runner-up, and if that wasn't enough, she became the 2022 Pan Americans champion, competing in the 16U division as an 8th grader. In February of this year, she became an Iowa high school state wrestling champion at 152 pounds during the first ever sanctioned girls state wrestling tournament, and the first in her school's history, going 49-0. Ladies and gentlemen, my special guest, Skylar Slade. Welcome, Skylar. So what does that sound like as I'm sitting here messing up, right? As I'm sitting here naming off all these great accolades and accomplishments, what does that sound like as I'm saying it to you?
Sometimes it doesn't even sound real. Sometimes it sounds like, oh, who's he even talking about? Because sometimes I don't even remember myself, some of the certain tournaments I've done and the certain accomplishments. And sometimes thinking about it all can get overwhelming for sure. And having them listed and read back to me sometimes is a lot. But I honestly, sometimes I always just I also just think it's wow, that's so cool. I've had so many opportunities to go and place at these tournaments and, compete at such awesome tournaments.
Yeah. Is that important to dump it to once you do it, it's I got to forget about it, move on to the next thing?
Yeah, I think so because I do so many high level tournaments at this point that if I sit and just obsess over one tournament, I'm not gonna be ready for my next one. And honestly, even if I go do my best and I win, I let it go because there's no need to it's still gonna be there at the end of the day. At the end of the day, I'm still gonna have won that tournament, but I don't have to sit there and continue to talk about it, continue to think about it. It's done. So you just got to move on to the next one.
That's a great mindset to have, to be able to even though it's such a big accomplishment, it's not like we're saying, yeah, you won the Urbandale tournament or something, and some
right.
people, for some people, that's maybe as good as it's going to get.
Right.
So can you go ahead and just give your audience here a little backstory about your origin story about how you got started into wrestling?
Mm-hmm. So originally my dad was kind of a big wrestler when he was in high school. He did it all 4 years of high school. And my mom did a little bit of wrestling in college. And so they had that background of wrestling there. And really it started with my older brother, Mike. And he started wrestling when he was about 5. And I was kind of just always in the wrestling room with him because, I was a year younger. And honestly, when I was younger, I'd kind of just go in because it was fun. I could mess around for a couple hours every day. Then I got a little bit older and I figured I'd try it out for a couple years. And that was kind of an off-on kind of thing. I want to say I took some time off after kindergarten. And then I came back for on and off for 2-3 years, and then I really stuck with it when I was about 8 or 9. And I'd say I struggled with some things when I was taking time off, and when I got back into it, I was struggling with some things just outside of wrestling as a whole. But since I was 9, I haven't really taken any time off. I've been very strict with training and tournaments, and I go to just everything I pretty much can. So
yeah, and some people say I teach jiu-jitsu, so little kids, I'm always like, we're just going to remember that tournament when you were
Right.
like 6,
Right.
and that's hard too. But, and I'm sure you were the cute little kid running around the room that,
Oh, yeah.
found your place in that room. So I'm glad that your brother was able to help inspire this, because I mean we wouldn't be sitting here today talking
Right.
about it. Maybe it'd be something else we'd be talking about.
Right.
But keep telling me more about your origin story. So you got into you said from 9 moving forward, were you competing all the time, or were you just going to practices and learning about it, or?
I'd say when I was 9, probably that year, I was mostly just practicing because I felt like, oh, I've taken so much time off. I'm not ready to compete anymore. I need to get back into it. But I'd say when I was like 10, I was just every tournament that Mike was at, I'd probably go to, as long as it wasn't. I'd say when it didn't start doing like national level tournaments again until I was like 11. But yeah, so when I was 9, we did a lot of local tournaments, and when I was 9, 10, 11, most of the time I was losing most of my matches.
Sure.
I didn't win a lot, and the matches I did win, probably very close matches. But I really don't feel like I obsessed over that because I was just happy to be back in the sport.
Yeah, you were just a kid too.
Right. And honestly, like my parents, they don't pressure me into winning. They just want me to go out there and do my best. So even if I lose, but I feel like I wrestled well, I don't hold it against myself. Obviously, I'm upset I lose, but you can't progress if you obsess over that.
Sure.
But so.
Well, one of the important things, I don't mean to cut you off here, but like
Yeah.
one of those important things is like, and I think that's kind of a really big thing is like, especially with youth sports and youth wrestling, wrestling's hard.
Right.
It's a hard sport. We all know that. We can all accept that, but it's not just that. There's like a pace to it. It's like months long, right? But then you got parents that are involved in it, right? And we know the wrestling moms, right?
Right.
We know the T-shirt that gets handed out every year, right? Because it is. It's like, it's chaos, right? It's like your kids fighting, minus throwing punches, and being in regular street clothes, you're in a fight with another kid. And I think that's really hard for some parents to watch and witness and to see their kid go out there and win or lose. It's still in a fight.
Yeah.
So you talked about, your mindset was on like, it wasn't always like the winning aspect of it, right? It was competing and doing your best, right? If you're not winning, you're learning, right?
Right.
So can you maybe walk me through like maybe how your parents would be handling that, like as maybe a talk that they would give you, or a warm up in your mind that they would tell you to support you at that young age?
Well, they always wanted me to know that, like, because wrestling's obviously a very mentally taxing sport. Like, it's you and one other person. It's very stressful, and if you don't have the right skills to like cope with it, it can be way too much. And my parents always like say I'd go lose a match, they'd let me have my time, let me calm down, because it's like you want to win. You're so like into that match, so you need that time to cool down. But then after, they'll just tell me, hey, you did great, here are the things you need to work on. And then I'd remember those things and I'd work on them. And they didn't focus about like just the overall match. They focused on the little things that I need to work on that is going to get me better, is what's going to have me win those matches. And I was always like, I can't focus on a match before a match because I think about every way I could lose.
Yeah.
So it's
like reverse. It's like you're like reversing it on yourself, right?
Right. Like tricking myself into losing. So I'd always just like talk about anything and everything but wrestling right before my match. And I'd be laughing and just like taking that pressure off, because like you have the whole match to build up that pressure, before the match. I just like talk, listen to music, decompress.
going into this next aspect of it is, you always have somebody in your corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giving you that support, giving you
Right.
these lessons, mentoring you and teaching you about how to compete and how to
Mm-hmm.
have a good mentality
Mm-hmm.
about it as you approach competitions. So you mentioned your mom and your dad and your brother being some of those folks,
Mm-hmm.
but what about some other mentors or coaches that have been in your life that has helped you
Mm-hmm.
accelerate and help you grow in wrestling?
Yeah, so definitely started with the support of my family, but all from like the time I was so very young when I really like started to really love the sport. TJ Moan has really always been there for me as like a coach and like just like someone outside of wrestling that I can talk to wrestling about. Even if he was my coach, like he wouldn't pressure me about certain things and stuff like that. And there was also, I don't know if you know her, but Charlotte Bailey. She runs Few. Um, she she's been supporting me since I decided to come back, and she was my first kind of like intro into women's wrestling because when I was young I'd wrestle guys. So when I came back and then there's these girls to wrestle, she's who, because she had a daughter, so she wanted to push women's wrestling to grow it, and
I'm glad
she's
she did.
right, and she's the one who got me really started in that. And then when we moved to Ames, there was an assistant coach at the high school, Dwayne Myers, and he's also my high school coach now. He moved to Southeast Polk.
He followed you. Smart
Yes,
man.
right. He's such a great coach, and um he's always there for me and the other girls on the team. And I'd say those are probably the big three. They're always just so supportive, and anything I need wrestling wise, they're willing to go out of their way to give it to me, and it's so amazing to have.
Yeah, I was over there filming when you guys were practicing
Oh
over
yeah.
at Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
And just, when you're looking through a lens of a camera, your perspective is different, right?
Right.
Like you're taking this big wide lens when you're like looking with both your eyes, right? You're
Right.
looking at everything. But when I'm looking through a camera, I'm focusing on what I'm looking at. And I could
Mm-hmm.
tell definitely that you and TJ have that great connection
Mm-hmm.
and he cares about you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
Um, so how is that like working with TJ through? I know you guys have done multiple tournaments. So like in those big moments, like
Mm-hmm.
what is TJ doing that's unique and different that's connecting with you?
I'd say he's really good at like I've said it already today, but I do not handle pressure well.
Okay.
He's really good at like when I'm in that match, say I'm down, he's really good at just like calming me down and bringing me back into the match. And so I'm not like focused on who has more points, who's been up the whole match. He really just brings me back to like what I need to do so I can focus on my match and not what she's doing. And I feel like as a coach, that's just such a great thing for me because he does it with all his kids. Like all of his kids need something different, and he's so good at changing what he says to them or what he does for them based on what they need. And it's great to have him in my corner because he knows what I need to hear and what I need to get back in that match.
Yeah. And your brother was someone that inspired you to get into this
Mm-hmm.
sport, and he has successes of his own. Maybe tell me a
Yes.
little bit about you and your brother's relationship.
I'd say we have a pretty close relationship as brother sister. Um, Not so much when we were little, but as we've grown up, like we've been able to be wrestling partners. Like I've grown up watching him wrestle, and I've always loved watching him wrestle. And like finally being in that high school room with him this year, although sometimes it was on and off because
Mm-hmm.
girls and boys wrestling was separate. But it was so fun being able to like watch him practice, like watch him compete. Like he's just such a great wrestler and such a great person. Like I just love being able to be around that because like he's who I want to be. Like
How does your parents do that? How do your parents balance like Mike's wrestling today,
mm-hmm.
Skylar's wrestling? Like, which
Right.
was there a lot of that going on with like the
Yeah.
bouncing around?
There was a lot of going our separate ways because of tournaments, and there was that 2 week difference. So there was some tournaments getting close to like state that I had, that both my parents wanted to be at. So sometimes Mike would have to be at his tournament alone, but they were always really good about, my dad would mostly go with my brother and my mom would mostly go with me, but she was also my coach. So there was that.
So mom was coach too?
Mom was,
Tell me about that real quick.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
mean to cut this story
Yeah,
out. We'll
no,
get
of
back to
course.
Mike, because I got Mike on the schedule here.
Yeah.
But like, tell me about that. Like, I mean, obviously I know about coach and being a dad, but like
Right.
you and your mom, that connection.
Yeah, it's honestly great having her as a coach because, I mean, me and my mom are very close. Well, me and my whole family are very close, but it was kind of like a comfort thing having her there. And I wouldn't say I need her to be there, but when she told me that, oh, I want to get into coach, because she's been coaching my national stuff since I was in
And your
8th
mom
grade.
wrestled as well, right?
Yes, and she's been around it for most of her life by now. So, just like she knows what she's doing. Sometimes there's some moves that's like she's not as advanced, but like she's just great.
Well, wrestling's changed. It changes every year.
Right.
It's getting funky now.
Right. So, but she's just like a great
Her experiences maybe have helped that.
yeah, and like just like as a person, she's like such a great person to have as a coach. And all the girls on my team, they've talked to me about it multiple occasions, but they're like, we just love having your mom around. And because it's her, Dwayne Myers, and our assistant coach John. It's good having that like woman coach around because it's like sometimes with the girls they need extra stuff that sometimes the guys can't give them, and so having her around is like kind of that like little comfort thing for me and all the other girls.
It's a good balance. I think Coach Rowland was talking about that balance of like, you know, because he coaches for the girls team in Ankeny, so like, you know, he's like, how did I get picked for that? You know, like, I think it's a great balance to have somebody that understands women on a deeper level, because you girls are all going through changes too. You're all still in high school, so and she's already been through those things, so it's important to have that in a room, to have that balance, I think. One of the things that you mentioned when you were telling your story, you were talking about wrestling boys. So, and when did that officially change? In jiu-jitsu, I think it's 13. The girls, when they turn 13, they stop competing against boys and they move on to girls only.
I'd say it's about the same. I stopped after my 8th grade year. And that's mostly because like women's wrestling was sanctioned officially, so there was that girls wrestling. It was not girls and boys wrestling, you know. But in 8th grade, I think in like school stuff, I didn't have a girl match at all. So I only wrestled guys. And if that's what I had to do in 9th grade to continue wrestling, I would have, and I would have been fine with it. But like 8th grade to 9th grade year was such a big change, because it was just like going from not wrestling a girl match during school year season to only wrestling girl matches. But I mean, it's a change that needed to happen, and I think pushing towards all girls in their own division,
for sure, I think there's a change of maturity levels, like body wise, between boys and girls at that age.
And there's higher levels of like injury and just all that stuff. And I honestly I really prefer wrestling girls. I don't enjoy wrestling guys because they're just so strong. And like I can be a better
Do you think guys like wrestling girls? No.
I don't think anyone likes mixing, but like
it is uncomfortable, I think, on both sides. So I'm glad that happened. Like, what was that like in your experience though? Like going when you were wrestling just boys, you know, like was that hard for you in terms of like getting used to it, or like dealing with the crowd, or?
I'd say it was never really hard for me because that's where I started wrestling. Like when I was 5 years old, I was wrestling boys. So I never really found that level of discomfort. What I found discomfort in was like the reactions I'd get as a female wrestler wrestling boys. I'd get lots of negative reactions from, I mean, everyone, like the boy wrestler themselves, the coaches, the parents. It was hard dealing with that, not the actual wrestling. Mm-hmm.
So, um, you already kind of talked about that. So maybe talk about your coach over at Southeast Polk a little bit and kind of how he runs the room and how you like it. And
So our coach Dwayne Myers, he was originally a um assistant coach at Ames when we were there, and we when we were there we got pretty close. Like coach athlete, and he was friends with my parents. So when we moved to Altoona and Southeast Polk, they were looking to build that program, the women's wrestling program, and he's a great coach. And so when we knew that, like, we decided like, hey, we're gonna ask him if he wants to come get this head coach job, you know. And that was definitely not an easy process. It took like the whole summer, and he stuck it out for us. But like as a coach, he's so awesome. He's such a technical coach, and I feel like that's like, and sometimes that's what you need. Like we have our assistant coach John, who's kind of like the more like fast paced, like go 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 kind of
it's
guy.
good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. So like in that room when Dwayne and John are like both in there, we have a good mix of like technique that most girls need because they're very new, and we have that like push at the end of practice that really, you know, gets you going. Gets that cardio and stuff. So.
Yeah, and he's done a great job.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about the state tournament. So this is the first sanctioned,
Mm-hmm.
the first time the girls sanctioned, and you guys. I think there was over 400. Am I off on that number? 600, 695.
I think it was
somewhere
I
around
think
there.
it was around there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
It's huge.
It was huge, and it was really such an awesome experience because I was there the year before when it wasn't sanctioned, the year before it got sanctioned. And you know how they had that sign thing,
Mm-hmm.
the sanctioned? I was actually in that because I was on the Heartland Duels team. And so that was being like a part of like the like announcement that it was sanctioned, and then getting to wrestle in that tournament was like so special. And like just like the whole state tournament overall, it was so awesome. Like just they made the experience so awesome for the girls. Like they put in so much time and effort into it, and it was like this is the coolest tournament ever. Like
Yeah, it's like it was a lot of history in
mm-hmm.
in one weekend.
Right.
I mean, the first time it was sanctioned,
mm-hmm.
you were Southeast Polk's first girls state champion.
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty awesome. Some history.
Right.
You're a part of history. Tell me about the tournament though. So first match, walk me through kind of like your competition and where your thoughts and mind was at.
For my first match, I was very nervous, and my coach probably could tell you about this, but I was probably real uptight because it's just that first match of the tournament, and you just want to get it over with. You want to get into that flow of wrestling, and normally it takes the first match to do that. And so I was definitely like, just like, don't talk to me. Like, I can't even like be around anyone right now. But after that first, and my mindset was just like, let's just get this match over with. Let's just get in the flow of wrestling. So I went out there, had my first match, and then I immediately calmed down. As soon as I stepped off the mat, like just a lot of stress, like just disperse. But I'd say the whole tournament I was kind of uptight just because of like my reputation. Like there's a lot of stress I feel like there for me because like and I put a lot of stress on myself. Like,
Sure. Well, it's a lot to carry.
yeah,
I mean, when you're the number one girl and everybody's
right,
expecting, you're like, oh, you're supposed to win. And
right. And
sure.
so there's that level of expectation, and I hold myself to it too. And I feel like it's not always a bad thing, but sometimes I get a little hard on myself just in general. But like the whole tournament, I was definitely just like, okay, one match at a time. Like let's just get through this match, because like if I start thinking of finals before I'm even close to it, I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to get stuck up in that match. And then what about all my other matches, you know?
Right.
So I just had to really like reel myself back in just because of the pressure of the whole tournament. But
Now, was there anybody that you're like, oh my, this is the person in my bracket that I got to like pay attention to, or you'd already beat all of them?
there was a couple girls. There was a girl in my semis match. I'm pretty sure it was Nicole Olsen. She also had an undefeated record that year, so I knew that was gonna be.
What school is she from?
I do not remember off
That
the
school.
top.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, I do not remember off the top of my head. But that was like that was kind of the match I was building up to, um, for like the first day or so. And then Janela Vila came down from 170, I believe was where she was wrestling most of the year, to be in my bracket. And that was one I was looking out for as well, who I had in the finals, obviously. And Keely Curley from East Buchanan was also, she was on Janela Vila's side of the bracket, but they had already had a match at Super Regionals.
Mm-hmm.
So, those were the three big names that I was kind of looking out for during the tournament. So.
Awesome. So tell me about the finals match.
Honestly, I was so nervous. I was in the back warming up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I might throw up. Like, I was I was trying to be nervous about everything but the actual match, because
Well, it's tense. It's tense behind the curtains.
Right. It was right there. Like, luckily I was not the first match, and I got to see like how like people were like the setup of everything, and like how I was going to do everything. But like honestly, there's just so much that really went into that wasn't even wrestling. Like having to be there for the walkout,
Right, the
like
performance stuff of
yes,
it. Yeah.
the like what everyone sees of it, you know. And honestly, I don't think I even really had time to worry about the actual match until I was on the mat. And I was the first one out there, so I was waiting for her, you know, and that's when I was really getting like nervous, and I was very anxious on the mat. I was just like focused, you know. Mm-hmm. And it was a good match, and Janelle's a very good wrestler. And then I was also like worried about the after part, because there was like you had
like tripping on the mat again.
Yeah. Just like that again, as you said, the performance part, like you had to go over and sign the
bracket.
And there's
that's a neat part of it too. That's different than what the boys have, you know.
That was like the most exciting part, probably.
For sure.
Just
for
like
sure.
getting to wrestle that match, and then going to the back and signing that bracket, and then at my finals match getting to sign it right there on the mat. And
that's a cool touch. Nice
mm-hmm.
job, ladies. Whoever put that together is a nice work.
That was really cool. But there's so many cameras. I was like, I was overwhelmed, to be honest. And like after my matches, they'd take me to the media area, and there'd be more cameras there. And so that was definitely good exposure to cameras there. But there's just so much apart from the wrestling that made the wrestling even more stressful.
Yeah. I think that kind of crosses over, like when you look at professional sports, like mixed martial arts, boxing. Right. You know, like how do those guys get up for that when they got to do, like, they bounce from one interview, they got to come do some like documentary thing, and they got this.
Just so much.
I appreciate you taking my invite to come here and talk to me, as even if this is just another practice for you. because it is. I think as you progress in your skill set and you continue to do these great accomplishments, you're gonna be a motivator for other people, right? Younger girls that are follow, even guys that are following you. I'm gonna follow
Right.
you, so you'll motivate me to get up in the morning and do something extra, right? But that that's just a part of the gig that you're gonna have to learn how to get used to
Right.
as an athlete, and as you become a star athlete, it's gonna be more and more. So
Right.
stay authentic to yourself and continue to pass on good vibes to other people, because there's tons of lessons that you have, tons of experiences you have. They're going to be great lessons for other people.
Right.
So congratulations on that. So like when you got to hug your coach though, like you got to hug your parents, and how did
Right.
that feel to be like, even though, me and your mom had a conversation earlier about like state tournament versus like winning Pan Ams is like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's still a great accomplishment that not everybody gets to say.
Right.
Even they have 4 shots at it,
Right.
you know.
Right. I'd say like I was so amped up for the match, just like, when it was over and I got to just go hug the people that I love and I'm close with, I just like was so relieved. Like I wouldn't say I was relieved that it was over, but I was relieved that the stress was gone
Yeah.
and that they're the people I got to like see right after my match. Like I'd say I went to my head coach, then my mom, and then I ran up to my dad in the stands and got to give him a hug. And then TJ was there, so I got to talk to him right after my match. And then just my whole team was so supportive, and the some of my teammates were crying after my match too, and it was
Yeah.
there. Everyone was just so emotional, and but it wasn't like a bad emotional. It was like just everyone was so happy, and it was
Yeah.
it was like that. I'd say that.
You gave them relief too. You know what
Yeah,
they were doing in
yes,
the,
they're
you think
like
you're
biting
nervous,
their
the people in the
nails.
crowd are going crazy too. Like,
Right.
I was filming for Tyler Harper's match, and like there, you get to see, well, I've filmed all the finals, but
Yeah.
you get to see the ups and the downs of it.
Right.
You get to see the person who wins and
person.
how everybody, the whole place erupts, and their
Right.
families and their teammates are emotional in that happy way. But then you got the other side of it that,
Right. Right.
there's a loser, someone loses in that match,
Right.
and they got to have those same expressions, but just in a different manner. So,
Right. I'd say there's just like so much going on that I feel like sometimes, as you said, the one who loses the match gets like how they're feeling in that moment gets overlooked, because like there's not just the person who wins on that mat. And there's some things that like I've seen just like in general, which is like just after matches where I'm like, okay, like you can be excited, but let's not be disrespectful, because that person is out there to compete same as you. It's a 50-50 chance when you walk on that mat, and I've always just been like, I'm not going to get excited. I'm not going to be crazy until I'm off the mat, because there's that person out there and I don't want to be disrespectful towards my opponent.
absolutely.
And there's a difference between like celebrating and being like a
being
jerk.
happy.
Right.
And being happy too.
Right. Like you can be happy. Like I ran over, gave my coaches hugs, and I was happy. But I just like, there's certain things that there's like a good and a bad to it,
Yeah. And by human nature, we feel other people's energies, and we feel for those that put the time in. And that's what I always tell my students when they win is, or even when they lose, is be reminded that person did something really well today too.
Right.
So
Right.
so speaking of that, like how do you deal with when you take a loss and you still got to come back and wrestle? Because I've seen over many times, people that lose a match when maybe in their mind they expected to win and they didn't, and then they just don't show up for the rest of the matches.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not talking about Spencer Lee. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like they
just in
physically go out there and do it, but their mind is not in the match.
Yeah, they're mentally not there for the match. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to be that way very much so. Like if I lost a match, I might not make it in that tournament because I just shut down.
Right.
But it's as I said earlier, like I just have to let go of things. if like it happened at World Team Trials, I lost that match, and I wasn't necessarily expecting to win it because everyone in that bracket was just extremely talented. But I lost that match, and I was very upset, and I dwelled on that match longer than I probably should have. But when I had to be there for my next match, I was there. I didn't even think about that match before. I'm like, this is my first match of the day,
So
like,
do you contribute that
restart.
to your just like the way that you've built this over time, or is this like TJ being involved and talking you through things, or
I think it's a little bit of everything because like I TJ had to tell me that I was shutting down for my matches because I knew I was, but I wasn't conscious of it, So I was like, oh, like I lose a match and then I'm just gonna go lose the rest, Like I throw a little hissy fit and, shut down. But like TJ, like really, he showed me like, hey, like you lose this match, that's okay, but you have to show up because you want to strive for the next best
right?
place
You
you
need
can
the
get.
next best thing.
Yes. So if you can't get first, go get third.
There you go.
So like you always want first, but sometimes it's out of reach. So you just got to strive for the next best thing you can get, And I think that's like such an important thing with wrestling because that person that's third, they lost the match too. Everyone that's not in that finals has lost a match, So, you just got to be there, be present.
Yeah. Speaking about being present, let's talk about the future. What do you, in your mind, let's talk about your future first. What are some of your goals and aspirations for the future? And then we'll talk about just the future of girls wrestling in Iowa specifically.
Right. I'd say like I'd consider them short-term goals would be top 3 like Fargo, top 3 Super 32. What other tournaments are coming up? Some of those big tournaments like that. But long term, I want to continue building my way up to those world teams, and I want to be on the Olympic team someday, hopefully. I mean, that's like everyone's goal, with any sport you're in. They want to be the highest level competition that you can, So I definitely strive to be on that Olympic team someday, and who knows,
Can we make a deal right now?
Yeah, we can.
All right. You make the Olympic team. I get to do another documentary.
Deal.
Part two?
Deal.
All right. We're going to shake on it. There
Sounds
it is.
good.
So I think that's everybody needs to have a plan, even if you get sideswiped off your plan for a little bit, it's important to have some goals set out in front of you. So I like that you're aiming right for the top because you got a great support group. You got a great community. More people care about you probably than you know. And you're going to continue to meet more and more people that are going to get on that bandwagon with you and just keep pushing you in the right types of way.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to your future as well.
Thank you.
Where do you think the future of Iowa wrestling for girls is going to go?
Oh, with the way, if it continues to grow like it is now, I think it's going to be just as big or maybe even bigger at some point than the guys. Like the girls, it like doubles every year, the amount of girls. And there's also with like the like growing of it, there's also that like there's a lot of newer wrestlers, but I think the boys were at that point too at some time.
For sure.
So if we continue to grow like we are now, it's gonna be huge. Just in general, like Iowa, national, international, even maybe. So
yeah, the kids that are wrestling in 1984 are not the same kids that are wrestling this year.
Right.
They're the talent are always going to get better. What do you kind of contribute the growth of the sport like that for both men and women? It doesn't really matter. What do you contribute that to? Like how people are getting so much better and younger and better.
Right. I feel like there's more exposure to the sport now. Like more people know about the sport and more people know about it. So more people are striving to be good at that sport, you know? Like it's just like football. Like football has been growing and there's so much talent in it, even like little kids, you know, because they're exposed to it from a young age. So with like wrestling and media on wrestling growing at the rate it does, it's going to continue to grow, and younger kids are going to get more exposure to it, and that the younger they are, like the more time they have to build up those skills, you know.
So after you win the Olympics, what happens after that?
I've thought about this a couple times, and I want to after contribute something to the community. So I probably will be a coach after my wrestling career, hopefully. But if that doesn't work out, I want to stay in the community one way or another. So I'll find a way to contribute.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. I will find a way. I love that. Do you feel like you have that? I know your mom has coached you, and that's kind of in her. Do you feel like that's something that you already excel at?
I feel like it's something I'm better at others at. Like, I feel like I know how to explain positions, and I know what people need to hear, like during a match or after a match, because I mean, I was there. Like, I know it works for me, and sometimes that doesn't work for them, but you know, just gotta like go with them, you know, like, but like definitely being like exposed to like having like my mom being a coach, like I definitely think it like I know what a coach should be like. I know what like, you know, I know like coaches that everyone loves. Like I know successful coaches, so it's like I know what people want, I guess.
Right. And you know the attributes it takes to be successful in that. That's
Right.
awesome.
So.
I can't wait to see that happen either. That's going to be really cool. You're going to have a little monsters on your team, I bet. Let's talk about Pan Ams. Maybe like before we get into the wrestling part, just tell me about your journey, just going from flying out of Des Moines Airport and you're in Columbia.
Oh, well, it was definitely like the build up to it was kind of wild. Like I didn't know what to expect. Like going to a different country, and it's not like the most popular country either.
Sure.
Like, you know, but like just like the experience, like getting to like experience that was so cool. Like I got to travel there. Definitely the biggest barrier was the language stuff. Like I probably didn't talk to very many people because I was not
I
comfortable.
better start learning Spanish now.
Right. I guess I took the wrong class in high school. I took French. So, definitely that was a really big struggle, and like the money stuff. I was lucky enough to have TJ and my dad there, so I wasn't like alone with anything. Like if I didn't want to do something, I'd just make them do it for me.
Right.
And I definitely capitalized on that. I don't think I paid for one thing while I was there.
What was your favorite food? Did you eat a lot of food? I don't know if you were cutting weight or anything.
I was cutting some weight, but I got to eat some of their stuff. And after the tournament, their sugar there is different from ours. And
it's sugarcane sugar.
Yeah, it tastes so much better. I don't know how many Cokes I drank while I was there, but their Cokes were so good, and their Frosted Flakes.
Yeah, little caveat. So, what is your favorite food? What's your favorite after tournament food? And then what is your regular favorite food?
I'd say probably pickles.
Yes, I'm right there, which I love pickles.
I just in general like pickles after
pickled anything. Do
yeah.
you like pickle carrots and you don't like that's just pickles alone?
Pickles. But like after weigh-ins and like after tournaments, I want pickles right away, especially after a weight cut.
Yeah.
And just like
because it gets the salvation in your mouth rolling again. Yeah, for sure.
And just in general, I'm very much a pickle girl. But also on top of that, I'm very much like a sugar girl. Like I love sweets.
Yeah, me too. I love candy.
Me
I don't
too.
like I'm not like big into like cakes and stuff. Too much chocolate gets me, but like
I don't like too much
I
chocolate.
coach, so I have to constantly be like projecting my voice. So I'm always
Right.
like popping in like
Right.
airheads or something like that.
Yeah. Though when I was there, I kind of didn't. I don't know. I was more worried about like the wrestling, and then when I was out, I was like so worried about the language barrier. I feel like I didn't really get to like see much of the like culture, and some of the areas we were in were like um I wouldn't say touristy places, but like when people are there, that's where they go. So like there wasn't really that like authentic culture in the area we were in, but you could definitely see the differences with like there was like it was like the city, but there was also like just cattle everywhere.
Right.
And they all like drove around motorcycles, and they're very unsafe, by the way. Like the way they drove the motorcycles.
Yeah, you're gonna find that when you start traveling with the
Right.
Olympic team and stuff, you'll start seeing
everywhere.
that every other country drives crazy cabs. They're pretty scary.
Yes.
So
We took a couple cabs when we first got there and when we were leaving, and I was like, they drive really fast here. And it was like, and they swerve, and I was like, oh my.
And they're
goodness.
talking to you, like turn around,
Yeah.
talking, and you're like,
or
eyes on the road.
they're turning around, or they're on their phones,
Right.
and like, yeah, that was definitely, I'm like, whew.
Did anybody speak Spanish to you?
Yeah.
Because you look like you could pass for some of the Spanish, Dominican.
A lot of people thought I was Hispanic when I was there. But we were the only country there that did not speak Spanish. So when we got to the tournament, everyone's speaking Spanish around us, and some of them are trying to communicate with us to like do singlet trays or just like to talk,
Mm-hmm.
And I, for one, was lost, like completely. But we had a couple girls on the team who spoke Spanish, and their parents did, so they'd sometimes translate, but like they're there to wrestle too. You don't want to bother them,
Yeah.
So I got a lot of like girls like just trying to like talk to me, like
I wanted to touch your hair.
Yeah. Actually, there was a couple girls who like, one girl didn't even ask. She just came up and like started like touching my hair, and I was like, hi.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't really get bothered by that really. But it was definitely kind of overwhelming at some points though. Like when at the award ceremony, everyone's standing there waiting for their awards. And so that you kind of like we do it here, like we talk to each other after when we're getting awards, but I was just like, I kind of just stood there like,
I don't know what to say.
I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what to say, so, but I actually did end up getting to kind of talk to someone from Peru, and we did a singlet trade, which was super cool. So I have a Peru singlet now.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the whole trip was just so cool, and it was such a fun experience. But there's definitely some barriers that were a little hard to get past.
For sure. And how many matches did you have to wrestle?
I think I had 4 matches, because going into the tournament, I wasn't seeded. So I had a match to actually get into the tournament. And then my first match.
Interesting. So you won the trials,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're not seeded going into it.
Mm-mm.
Interesting.
So.
But you won.
Right. My second or third match actually was against the first seed in the tournament. So I was not seeded at all. And, but I definitely think there was some like uncertainty there. And the way they do their brackets is a little different, because you have to do a match to get into the tournament. And then if you lose, you're out. And then the only way you can be brought back in is if your girl that beat you is in the finals, which is a little confusing. And I was like, well, I guess that means I just don't lose, because, you know.
Yeah.
But so.
And it worked out, and you made the finals.
Yes.
So maybe tell me about that match. Let's talk just about the finals match.
That match, honestly, going into it, I didn't know what to expect.
And where was she from?
Do
you remember?
I think my finals match was a girl from Mexico.
Okay.
So going into that match, I was like, well, I don't know what to expect. Like, I already beat the first seed. Like, I don't know. And I didn't know about any of the girls there, obviously, because they're from different countries. So I kind of just walked into the match, not expecting much, but also expecting a lot,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, so far I've been doing great. So let's hope this match is the same. But I also didn't want to get too crazy because I'm like, I have no clue who this girl is.
Right.
You know? So the after part of the match was pretty cool too, getting to run around the mat. I was a little nervous for that, but the whole thing was pretty cool.
You talking about when you grabbed the flag and had to run around?
Yeah.
It's cool though. I mean,
it was cool.
We all, as a kid, I think I probably did that when I was a kid.
Right.
You know, practiced.
Right.
Never got the opportunity to really do it like that. So that's pretty awesome.
It was very cool.
I bet for your parents, you know, and TJ, that was I guess your dad was the only one there, but
yeah.
I bet that was pretty magical for them to be able to experience that with you.
Yeah. It was awesome, and everyone was so excited, and USA went over there and dominated, obviously. And so everyone's just like, oh, let's keep it going, you know. And I was the last match of the girls because I was the heaviest weight. And so getting to end the tournament like that on a good note was really cool too.
And then when you got home, was there like did anybody in your community do anything for you, or?
My mom got me like a big poster with my face on it, and like had like my weight and Pan Am champ, and then like everyone was just like really supportive about it. Like, I don't think I've gotten so many congratulations in my life. Like, it was a lot, and everyone was just really happy.
That's good. I always in my mind I was visualizing, I was like, I wonder if she got back and just like everybody's like normal, nothing was going on. You're like, hey, do you realize what I just did? But you know, like when me and your mom was talking about the state tournament, you know, being everybody's like, she got to win a state tournament before she can, you know, it's a pretty big deal when you go to another country and you win the Pan Ams. So even in the jiu-jitsu world, winning Pan Ams is pretty great. So, but you just got back from the World Team Trials, right?
Yes.
So that was in
Washington.
Spokane. And tell me about that.
It was really cool. The area we were in, there wasn't much to do, so it was we kind of walked around sometimes. I mean, there was hiking and there was like rafting and stuff, but nobody really wants to do that when they're wrestling.
Right.
You know,
Burn any more calories.
Right. So, but like the area was nice and it was really pretty there. It was kind of gloomy while we were there. It rained a little bit, but it was cool, and the tournament itself was cool. Thinking like it was cool being there with the U23s because U17 and U23s were at the same time. So getting to see like that high level, like where I want to be wrestle at the same time as me was really cool too. Anybody
that you were watching, I mean, obviously you're focused on your match, but is there any of those girls in that U23 you're talking about that you're like, man, I look up to that, I respect that, you know? And
there's a couple girls, but I don't know, I'm not really like one to like specifically watch like those high level athletes. I kind of just want to see them all and see like how they're wrestling, and like that's how I want to wrestle, you know. So I kind of just overall watch who's winning, you know. And like there's obviously the big names that everyone watches, so that was cool,
like Skylar Slade.
not yet, but maybe. But yeah, so just like getting to be there, and then the next day there was U20s as well, so there's lots of high level girls there. Getting to watch them wrestle was cool.
And so you ended up placing fourth. So did you face any challenges in there that were like, I know I read one of TJ's posts saying you were dealing with some adversity over there.
Yeah. I was struggling with a weight cut.
Which is everybody's favorite thing to do.
Right. Just best part about wrestling, right?
Yeah.
But I went down, the weight class changed from 45 to 43, which was a little bit lower than I've been for a while. And so getting down there was kind of a struggle. And then I had scratch weight the next day, which also I struggled with. I was 3 pounds over the night before. So
there's no weight allowance.
No.
You got to be on.
And I'm not the best at cutting weight because I don't do it very
I
often.
don't know anybody who's great at cutting weight. Like
Right.
it's miserable. It's
Right.
not fun.
It's horrible. But so we definitely struggled with that, and just like after the long day, it was like, now I have to go work out again and lose 3 pounds, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So luckily that came off pretty fast, but I was just, the next day I could feel it. I was so tired. Like I didn't wrestle like me. And there was also like that first match that I wrestled against the Michigan girl. I feel like it was kind of a wake up call. Like I was getting too comfortable with my wrestling, and now I know, like, there's still so much that I need to work on, and I definitely needed that match. So.
Now, are you getting good work now? Do you have partners right now that can push you?
Mm-hmm. In TJ's room right now, I'm mostly working with the guys, because that's just like, who's gonna push me right now?
Right. That was one of the big questions I was going to ask you today, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we were talking about it now, because
Yeah.
I would have totally forgot it.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, like I wonder who's pushing her in there, because I like when I watched you in TJ's at Simpson, I was like, who's she going to work with?
Yeah. I mostly work with the guys. Sometimes I wrestle my brother.
I got a bunch of girls. You want to come beat up on some girls at my gym?
Right. But yeah, so there's sometimes I wrestle the coaches. It just depends on who's there that day. But,
Right.
Definitely building up to World Team Trials. I was mostly wrestling the guys. So
Awesome. So looking at the future here again, you got Freestyle State coming up,
yes,
which is like the pre-qualifier for Fargo, right? Am I correct on that?
Yes.
So you as runner-up at Fargo in 2022.
Yes.
So any thoughts on going into this year's tournament?
Yeah, there's definitely that pressure there because of how I did last year, but also like I'm more focused on my wrestling right now, not about where I like place.
Right.
Like obviously I want to win. Obviously I want to be that like top girl, but if I'm just not there yet, I'm just not there, you know? And wrestling right now, like how I wrestle, my like technique and stuff is definitely what I'm focused on, because there's some stuff I'm struggling with right now, just like any other wrestler.
Sure.
So like really I'm more worried about how I'm going to compete at that tournament, not how I'm going to place. But
it's a good way to look at it.
But there's still that level of just like, oh, she got runner-up last year, like how's she going to do this year, you know?
Right.
But
and your brother did pretty good at Fargo as well, from my understanding, right?
Yeah, he did. He All-Americaned in Greco, and last year he was dealing with some mental stuff, just like wrestling in general, because he had a tough year the year before getting sick. So he was still dealing with that stuff, but I think guys need to watch out for him this year.
Yeah, he's a beast.
Right.
He's a beast. I've gotten to watch him over at TJ's, but I've gotten to see him wrestle a couple times too. So I wish I could have seen you wrestle more this year as well. But since we're going to do this documentary, I'll be able to see you wrestle a lot.
Right.
So it's going to be cool. So one of the cool stories your mom was talking about before we started here was that you guys used to travel around in your RV to go find these tournaments for you to compete in. What was that like?
Well, it was a little interesting at first because it was around that, like, it was kind of around that COVID time, like towards the end of it when everyone was kind of getting back to normal or working towards it anyways. So, like, there was just, like, that level of, like, uncertainty with tournaments. Like, there was one tournament I went to, and you had to wear a mask right up till you got to the mat, and they were spraying in between every third match, and there was chemical burns. There was people passing out because it was hot. It was like summer, middle of summer, and we're in this little crammed in this little not storage area, but like, you know, place, and it's just like it was a hot mess. And getting to like travel around and like see like how COVID like affect everyone in the wrestling community was kind of cool, but also like was kind of sad because like there was just like everyone's uncertain now. There's just so much going on with like wrestling that's like not
Kids
even
transferring schools. To try to, yeah.
Right,
There was a
there's
lot of
just-
stuff going on with that.
There's just a lot. So
Did you guys have to practice with your mask on?
No, we did not at
My
any
son was
point.
telling me that's what they had to do in the beginning. I was like, "You're practicing with your mask on?" I didn't understand what was going on. But
No, me personally, I never had to go to a practice that required a mask or a tournament that required a mask while you're wrestling, because there was a couple of those that I heard of. But there was kids that would wear masks like on their own accord, but it was never required, and you know, but like just like hearing about it and sometimes even seeing it was kind of bizarre, you know?
yeah, for sure.
Cause like that's not what you're used to, and it's like it's such a like a
Well, there's also the fear too. Is like, are we going to get it back? Are they
Right.
going to take it completely away? I mean,
Right.
I run a jiu-jitsu school. My business got closed down.
Mm-hmm.
The state closed me down. We couldn't touch each other, be in the same building.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing virtual classes. You know how hard it is to do virtual jiu-jitsu or virtual wrestling?
Right.
I mean, that's like watching a YouTube video on it, but like there's no partner assisting or anything like that.
Right.
So
So yeah, there was always that level of uncertainty. Like, am I even gonna get to compete this year? Like, are those tournaments that I want to go to, are they gonna be an option? You know?
yeah,
And there's also that like, am I gonna get sick? Are we gonna get sick? Like, there was always that risk, you know. But I feel like me competing that year, really, it was the year I started to like get good, you know? Like I started to like improve. So I feel like if I would have just been scared and like not done anything, I don't know where I'd be at, you know? Taking that whole year off, cuz some people did, and I don't think that was beneficial to anyone, taking that whole year off. Just like in general from like working out, you know. I know there was a lot of like struggles with like finding places to work out and stuff, but I just know like we did anything we possibly could to like
I hosted a few wrestling classes
Mm-hmm.
for Paulo Basa
Mm-hmm.
and his guys up there. I was surprised that they were just like, we don't have a place to train. I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Right.
Well, welcome. Doors open.
TJ's club, we were, I don't remember where we were at the time, but I remember, excuse me, for a little bit, we didn't have a place to train because like they had taken it away, and there was drama with that, and I think there was a week or two where we didn't have any practices because there just wasn't anywhere we could train. But TJ really got on that and got us a place, and the numbers were kind of scarce for a while, you know, which was to be expected, but after a while it just started building back up, you know. People started being like, okay, like we need to get back into it, you know.
Mhm.
So it took some time, but everyone got back to normal eventually, and there's still those problems, but you know, people were like, give or take, you know.
Yeah. I'm glad we got back to normal,
Right.
some sort of normal at least.
Right.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. We've covered a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and I feel like we could do this for like 2 or 3 more hours.
Right.
Do you want to give a big shout out to Scott Turner for making our link up
Yes.
finally happen here?
Yes, thank you,
Even though
Scott.
our names keep popping up in the same conversation,
Right.
I appreciate that he put that together.
Yes.
And I wish you the best of luck
Thank
on
you.
all the things that's coming in the future. I'm looking forward to doing this documentary with you. It's going to be
Yes, me
awesome.
too.
It's gonna be the best. I'm gonna give you my
Right.
best. So you give everybody else your best. I'm gonna give you my best. So,
Thank you.
Skylar Slade, thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
on the show. Thanks.
Of course.